from West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
Support for the Legislature Today is provided by the following.
West Virginia University, online at wvu.edu. The High Technology Foundation, headquartered at the I-79 Technology Park in Fairmont, online at wvhtf.org.
At the Legislature today, the Senate passes the governor's bill to reform the state's juvenile justice system. Senators from both sides of the aisle praise the bill they say will mend troubled kids and their families. A public hearing this morning brings out the issue of discrimination against the LGBT community in West Virginia, and the State Board of Education held an emergency meeting today to discuss a bill they say could cause substantial harm to students, teachers, and school systems in the state. We'll find out more on the Legislature today. Good evening, I'm Ashton Mara. As it's worked its way through the legislative process, Senate Bill 357 has incited passionate debate from senators and delegates alike. Members of the House joined the Senate and approved the Coal Jobs and Safety Act of 2015 today, but debated the bill for 2 hours before the final vote. Liz McCormick reports.
Delegate John Schott, the Judiciary Chair, explained the bill.
This act strengthens the state's enforcement of the coal industry's drug testing program to treat all miners the same and promote drug-free coal mines. It updates West Virginia's mine laws on equipment movement and operation to match federal regulations and well-established safety standards, in one instance exceeding the federal regulations requiring the movement of workers out by, when in the case of the movement of equipment where electrified trolley wires are present. It also places oversight of underground diesel equipment in the hands of experienced state mine safety regulators. It syncs state reclamation rules with federal laws to bring consistency to regulatory oversight. It adjusts the aluminum water quality standard to reflect the latest science and better protect the environment. And it conforms permit enforcement processes to federal laws.
After the bill was explained to members, a flood of debate ensued on the floor. Republicans expressed belief the bill was steering the coal industry in the right direction because it was updating technology and saving money, while Democrats felt the bill would roll back the safety laws currently in place. The bill had full support from Republicans, but Democrats were divided. Delegate Rupert Phillips of Logan County was one of those Democrats who supported the bill.
If we're going to move our state forward and be competitive on what's built this state, the backbone of the state, the coal miner, we're going to move forward. We cannot continue to let DC, EPA, and other groups overregulate our industry.
Delegate Gary Howell, the government organization chair, also supported the bill.
It is time we updated these laws for safety. Time changes, technology changes. We must make sure our coal miners are safe. I support this bill, and I hope you will too, for the safety of our miners.
Delegate Barbara Fleshauer of Monongalia County was strongly against the bill.
There's not anything in this bill that improves safety, nothing. And I can't believe, after all the fires and explosions we've had in this state recently, we would, and you know what they are, Upper Big Branch, Aracoma, Sago, that we would ever consider rolling back safety protections.
Minority Leader Tim Miley also expressed rejection of the bill.
We haven't even heard the cost savings per ton as to what this bill will accomplish. Wouldn't you think? When you can measure man hours saved by activities in the mine that you do or don't have to do as a result of this bill. You can measure that. How many man hours, combined man hours, does it take to stop the mining operations, move heavy equipment, and then bring the miners back in. You can measure all of that. This is the 21st century. You can measure all of that. We can measure what effects and cost savings the environmental aspects of this bill will have. We can measure how much it costs to lay track. We can measure all of that. That's how you come up with the cost per ton as far as how much it costs to mine a ton of coal. If it really were going to save that kind of money to reinvest back into creating jobs, I think we would know that.
After the 2-hour debate, House Bill 357 passed 73-25, with only Democrats voting against. For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, I'm Liz McCormick in the House.
Senators also continued their push through some controversial pieces of legislation today, putting a bill to a vote that would expand the right to carry a concealed weapon in the state. The bill, backed by the National Rifle Association and the Citizens Defense League, was difficult to accept by some senators, but ultimately received the chamber's approval. Senator Mike Romano stood on the floor of the Senate and attempted 3 times to amend Senate Bill 347. The bill creates the Firearms Act of 2015 and allows anyone over the age of 18 to carry a concealed weapon in West Virginia without a permit.
First Amendment regards a residency requirement to be able to take advantage of our West Virginia constitutional rights. And this is a common sense amendment.
Romano's first attempt to amend the bill would require non-residents of West Virginia to still have a concealed carry permit, keeping felons convicted in other states from being able to carry in West Virginia. It was an amendment Senator Corey Palumbo says he supports after speaking with a sheriff in his district.
He was concerned about the fact that it would open up our state to out-of-state criminals to come in, and he says from time to time they see these criminals, they see these drug dealers carrying weapons, they can stop them, they can prevent them from committing a criminal act, but if we don't adopt this amendment, they'll no longer be able to stop that. They'll just say, okay, you've got a gun, move on and go about your business. They will not be able to do anything to criminals from other states who are not able to get a permit in their state, but they'll be able to come into our state and carry on their criminal activity with law enforcement having no ability to stop that.
Republicans, however, spoke against the amendment, including Senator Robert Carnes.
The Second Amendment recognizes this inherent right that all Americans have, and I don't think that we want to be the state that discriminates against people from other states and infringes upon the rights of people from other states simply because they're not from around here.
Only 4 other states in the nation have a constitutional carry law like the one Senate Bill 347 would put in place in West Virginia: Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, and Vermont. Wyoming allows only residents to constitutionally carry, as Romano's amendment proposed, but the amendment failed 4-30. The senator from Harrison County again attempted to amend the bill, pushing the age to carry from 18 to 21. Again, Republicans stood to oppose the amendment, including Senator Kent Leonhardt.
If you're legally allowed to own a firearm, you should be legally allowed to carry that firearm in whatever safe manner you see fit. A 21-year-old is not automatically bestowed with some great wisdom and prudence. And what differentiates them from an 18 to 20-year-old, or vice versa? This is an arbitrary number, and it places further limits on our constitutional rights. I oppose this amendment.
Romano says those 3 years do make a difference.
We're talking about a firearm. And when you're on the business end of a firearm, there's no pulling back that bullet. And as somebody who grew up with guns since I was 6 years old, and I venture to guess I've got more guns than 90% of you over there, I know how dangerous they are. I know what a grave responsibility it is to own them, but I challenge you to show me 5 out of 10 18-year-olds that respect them the same way. I didn't respect them at 18. We don't have the life experience. We don't have the knowledge of what it is about life and death.
The amendment failed on a voice vote, but Romano stood one more time to amend the bill.
We're not going to keep concealed weapons out of the hands of high school kids. We're going to allow anybody who comes across our border to carry one. Let's at least put in place a basic handgun training course that the National Rifle Association for decades has made the centerpiece of their association. Training and safety is the key to handling a firearm.
Senator Carnes opposed the amendment, saying it would gut the intent of the bill by requiring owners to still carry a permit, but instead a permit saying they had completed the safety course. The amendment also failed, and the bill passed 30-4, with only Democrats voting against it. Senate Bill 393 was also put to a vote today. The bill is backed by Governor Tomlin and comes as a result of the Juvenile Justice Task Force he compiled last summer. The bill aims to make reforms to the state's juvenile justice system by focusing on community-based counseling, behavioral, and rehabilitative programs to keep kids from being institutionalized in the state. Senator Mike Woelfel presided over juvenile cases for 30 years as a juvenile referee.
What this bill does is to divert our younger children away from the court system and put them in a position where they have counseling services and where their families can be mended. You can't modify behavior of a 17-year-old, but you can modify the behavior of young children, and that's what this bill will do. It will allow the state, through its agencies and via contract with private agencies, to get into these homes, to help these little 7 and 8, 9 and 10, 11-year-old kids out and divert them away from the system. So, major step forward.
Senator Chris Walters was a member of the task force and says at any given time, the state is sending more than 150 kids to out-of-state facilities to seek treatment they can't find in West Virginia.
And the issue is when they come back home to families that may be addicted to drugs, to families who aren't taking those kids to school and causing them to be institutionalized, they're going right back to the same problems. They may have gotten the treatment, but their families never did. This bill addresses that. This bill gets wraparound services for the children and for their families.
The governor's bill passed unanimously and now goes to the House for its consideration. Senate Bill 423 was on second reading in the chamber today. The bill makes major changes to the above-ground storage tank law put into place during the 2014 legislative session after a chemical leak in Charleston left 300,000 people without usable water for as many as 10 days. The bill will likely be put to a vote during a weekend floor session. Senators will also take up a bill this weekend to allow for charter schools in West Virginia. It's a bill lawmakers have been working with the state superintendent of schools, unions, and other stakeholders to craft for more than a month now. The bill is expected to see multiple amendments on the floor tomorrow, some of which could change the way the West Virginia Board of Education oversees the charter school system. Members of the state board held an emergency meeting this afternoon, not over charter schools, but another bill making its way through the legislature. Here this evening to discuss that meeting is one of the newest members of the state board, Beverly Kingery. She was appointed to the board by Governor Tomlin this year and is a former superintendent, principal, and teacher. Thank you so much for being with us this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Let's talk about that emergency meeting first this afternoon. What did you all discuss?
We discussed the bill in its current form, and actually when we were in the meeting we got an update on the bill that was happening in the House at that moment. We discussed the actual contents of the bill, we discussed the fiscal note that would be associated with that bill, and we discussed the urgency of making sure that the children in the state of West Virginia have the best options available for them for education as possible.
And we should say that bill is one that would repeal the Next Generation standards, or what are West Virginia's Common Core standards. So what are lawmakers telling members of the board and telling the superintendent about Common Core? Do they have specific reasons that they don't like the standards, or is it just this idea of a national set of standards coming into the state?
When we have spoken individually and collectively with lawmakers and with parents and other citizens, we have posed a question. Specifically, which standards do you have difficulty with in language arts and math? And those are the ones that we should sit down together, let cooler heads prevail, and work through those differences and update those standards if necessary. To this date, and to my knowledge, we have not been able, when we've had those discussions, to have people to tell us the exact standards they're opposed to.
So you're new to the state board, but not new to the education system. You were a superintendent when those next generation standards were being developed. A lot of the confusion is the difference between content standards and curriculum. Can you explain that difference?
I'll give a very concrete example. A standard at the kindergarten level states that students would be able to understand concept of print, which concept of print is knowing to move your finger left to right when you're reading sentences front to back in a book and top to bottom on the page. If we would repeal the standards and completely do away with those, as it is my understanding was on the House floor today for a reading and amendment, then we wouldn't be teaching that. That's the standard. How that standard is delivered in the classroom is the curriculum. And my fear is that people are confusing actually what students are to be taught and how they're taught that. Another example could be students that would be using 2 or 3 pieces of information, maybe a magazine, maybe a nonfiction book, and maybe something from the internet, to determine some facts. That's the standard. How they do it is the curriculum.
I want to mention quickly that $113 million over the next 3 years, that's what it would cost the state if the legislature should repeal Common Core. Generally, what would that go to pay for?
That would pay for the development of the standards to bring the committee members in of teachers, business people, higher education, all the folks that the legislation would state. It would require the funding for those meetings. It would also be for professional development, because we would have to do professional development to re-educate the total educational workforce in this state in delivering those standards, teachers and administrators. It would go for public meetings, which that part I think would be good, to have some public meetings with parents out in the field and other community members. And there's a multitude curriculum. The curriculum would have to be changed because the curriculum materials we use now are aligned to our standards.
So a lot of different things. State Board of Education member Beverly Kingery, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
There was a packed house this morning for a public hearing over local anti-discrimination ordinances. We'll have a report in just a moment, but first, here's a look at what's coming up in the Senate.
Among the bills up for passage, Senate Bill 94 to establish a driver's license restoration program when the license has been lost for unpaid tickets or non-safety related reasons. Senate Bill 278 to prohibit hunting with night vision technology, a drone, or other unmanned aerial vehicle. The bill permits hunting with crossbows. Senate Bill 423 to amend the Above Ground Storage Tank Act to address and correct certain unintended consequences of the original enactment. The program is now focused on tanks with a capacity of 10,000 gallons or more within zones of critical concern of public water utilities. Senate Bill 454 to make trademark counterfeiting a crime and provide penalties to help West Virginia higher education institutions protect their intellectual property. Among the bills on second reading, Senate Bill 17 to authorize the regulation of unlicensed off-road motorcycles upon public streets, roads, and highways by municipalities and counties within the Hatfield-McCoy Recreation Area. Senate Bill 548 to alter the manner in which vacancies in the United States Senate are filled. The bill does not allow the governor to make the appointment and requires the governor to call a special election. And Senate Bill 574 relating to liquor sales by distilleries or mini distilleries.
House Bill 2881 was the subject of a public hearing this morning in the House chamber called the West Virginia Intrastate Commerce Improvement Act. The bill prohibits cities and counties from passing ordinances that prohibit discrimination. Charleston, Huntington, Morgantown, Athens, Harpers Ferry, and Thurmond all have adopted ordinances banning discrimination against LGBT citizens in jobs and housing. The state legislature has never passed a bill extending those protections. Here's some of the testimony both for and against House Bill 2881.
Do not deny us our basic human rights. Do not rip protection out from underneath of our children. Allow us to function as adults who contribute to society. Allow society to belong to everyone, not just some. Be aware that diversity is not scary. Be aware that blanketing discrimination with beneficial societal concerns does not make us blind to the wickedness here. I pay taxes to the very system that ostracizes me. I love my country, and I am proud to be an American. Am I privileged to live in a free nation? I would be if I were free.
This was a decision that we, as a town, had the right to make. It was our decision, and we were proud to make it. Passing this bill would undermine the most fundamental component of the American system of government, the town hall meeting. Our country was founded inside the timber frames of town halls, not the marble walls of big government.
Rather, this hearing is about whether our legislature should pass the state laws, or should some cities and government entities pass laws which must invariably be enforced and adjudicated by the state. The answer is clear: no. Cities and government entities cannot usurp state laws, plain and simple. House Bill 2881 is a good bill, one that overturns the backdoor efforts of activists to usurp the authority of 134 legislators that readdress this same issue every year. Mr. Chairman, I say to all West Virginia legislators in both houses, pass this bill.
The City of Huntington and the West Virginia Municipal League oppose House Bill 2881. The 11 members of the Huntington City Council voted unanimously to extend protection to all citizens in the city regardless of sexual orientation. We in Huntington have determined that there are those among us who have experienced the loneliness and pain of exclusion. Citizens in our community who are gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgendered have every right to expect that they can sip from the fountain of community participation. That is our determination. It has no effect on any other community. The elected officers of the City of Huntington are the proper arbiter of this decision. House Bill 2881 is an unwarranted and unnecessary intrusion in the policymaking responsibility of the duly elected officials of the City of Huntington and all municipalities in the state of West Virginia.
As a professor, when I look and grade my students' papers on economic policy, usually I would expect them to have some type of research or data to support it. They say that it will support and attract businesses. Meanwhile, against the bill, they say it's against. There's no data here. We have no data. You should not base an economic policy without having any data supporting it whatsoever. If this were a paper in my class, I would grade it not because of its conclusion, but because there's zero evidence for it. It would be a failing grade.
This bill, House Bill 2881, isn't who we are. It's narrow, it's bigoted, it's a legislative power grab. It is not who we are. It's not the message that we want to send to the world. It's not the message we want to send to our children. Mountaineers are always free, except for you,
Thank you.
No.
I returned to Greenbrier County 19 years ago, and I live in Lewisburg. I'm a proud West Virginian, hopefully a faithful Episcopalian, and I'm proud to call another born and bred West Virginian who taught for 35 years in our public school system, my wife.
Let's talk honestly about this. This is a good meeting. This room is called the People's House. This is where this conversation should take place. Everybody's been pretty positive, and this is how we should do public policy. This bill is not about discrimination. This bill is about public policy. Now, as far as the local rule goes, at the very moment we have some country town install a protected class of the KKK or some other hate group, that argument changes. I've already had conversations with many of you in your leadership. Then 2881 would say, no, we can't let a town give protection to a class of people that are full of hate. Those decisions should be decided here.
Afternoon, the committee indefinitely postponed consideration of the bill. Now here's a look at some of the bills coming up in the House.
Among the bills up for passage, Senate Bill 361, the Prevailing Wage Bill, House Bill 2478, the Governor's Bill to revise certain aspects of public school finance and the school aid formula, House Bill 2793, relating to regulation of homeschooling. House Bill 2934, repealing the Common Core standards. House Bill 2976, to expand the eligible master's and doctoral level programs for which a nursing scholarship may be awarded. Among the bills on second reading, House Bill 2368, to require the Commissioner of the Bureau of Children and Families to make a child fatality and near fatality report to the legislature annually by July 1st, based upon public proceedings, records, reports, case histories, and other documents of the Division of Child Protective Services. House Bill 2395, the Storm Scammer Consumer Protection Act, to provide consumers with the right to cancel residential roofing contracts where the contract is expected to be paid from a property and casualty insurance policy. House Bill 2485, to prohibit deposits into the West Virginia Future Fund in years when certain state retirement systems are not funded to 90% or more of their actuarial accrued liabilities. House Bill 2496 provides a streamlined process that allows physicians to become licensed in multiple states. House Bill 2550 to increase the number of unexcused absences from 5 to 10 before action may be taken against the parent, guardian, or custodian of the student. House Bill 2688 relating to forced pooling of oil and gas wells. And House Bill 2829
This has been the Legislature Today. We welcome your comments or questions about the issues at this legislative session. You can email us at feedback@wvpublic.org. I'm Ashton Mara. Thanks for joining us. Good night.
Support for the Legislature Today is provided by the following:
West Virginia University, online at wvu.edu. The High Technology Foundation, headquartered at the I-79 Technology Park in Fairmont. Online at wvhtf.org.